Good morning. Today, for our closing session, it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce Aaron Putze. Raised on a farm near West End, Iowa, Aaron Putze is a 26-year veteran of the agricultural communications profession. He currently serves as Senior Director of Information and Education for the Ankeny-based Iowa Soybean Association. It serves Iowa's nearly 38,000 soybean farmers by helping them grow and market soybeans more profitably and sustainably. Aaron has always been intrigued by those who strive, succeed, lead with positivity, and give maximum effort to make those around them better. He's a popular speaker, work-life coach, and the author of two books, Destined for Greatness, The Story of Chuck Long, and Resurgence of Iowa Hawkeyes Football was published in 2017. More recently, Aaron published You Are Destined for Greatness, Stories of Inspiration and Empowerment. The latter shares 16 success themes distilled from conversations with more than 25 inspiring personalities, all with Iowa roots. Aaron is a graduate of the University of Northern Iowa and member of the Walkie, Rotary, and Knights of Columbus. He's a big fan of the outdoors, traveling internationally, doing gardening, and spending time with family. Aaron and his wife, Crystal, and children, Garrett, Grant, and Jalen, live in Walkie. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Aaron Putze.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure to join you this morning, and thank you very much, Alka, for that wonderful introduction. It truly is a pleasure to be invited to serve as your closing keynote for such an important, just such an important meeting. And I want to thank all of you for making the time to do so. I know that there are many other things competing for your attention. Hopefully your brackets are faring better than mine. Was not a very, very good day yesterday for my brackets, but I hope that yours are doing better. You know, it truly is such a special thing to be a Rotarian and to be a leader. And I want to start this morning by reminding all of us that leadership isn't a title or a designation. In fact, leadership is a mindset. It's a mindset. It's the way we approach what we do. It's the way that we give of ourselves and the way that we're going to approach making Rotary and the year ahead the best year ever. Because we have a lot to offer. And, you know, I think about where we are. I think about being in the upper Midwest, being from the wonderful states that we all represent. And, you know, I'm reminded of some of those words by Jeff Foxworthy when he says, you know, you may be from Minnesota if the local Dairy Queen closes for 4 months out of the year, or you may be from Iowa if you're shopping in Home Depot and you ask for help and the person who provides it does not work at Home Depot. Or you may be from South Dakota if you've ever worn a pair of shorts and a Carhartt jacket on the same day. Or you just may be from Wisconsin if you've run your furnace and your air conditioner on the same day. Or you may be from the upper Midwest if actual snowfall during the winter makes the roads better because it fills in all of the potholes. You know, I think we can all take a great amount of source of satisfaction of where we're from and the people we serve. And I have to tell you that as a Rotarian, I've met some of the best people on the planet. And it's that fellowship that has meant so much. And I think it's rooted in the four-way test. When you think about it, wouldn't the world be a much better place if everyone lived the four-way test? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? I mean, what a magnificent test, a magnificent frame of mind and approach to take to not just being a Rotarian, but to living as well. I believe that we all are capable of doing some great things. Success to me is really nothing more complicated than a combining of inspiration and perspiration. And as I thought about the remarks that I wanted to share with you today, and I've been privileged to and have had the opportunity to visit a good many of the clubs that are present here this morning and to be able to share some thoughts with you, I think about the wheel that we're about to take hold of. And of course, as Alka mentioned, as being from the farm, this is a steering wheel that I'm not unfamiliar with. As I think about the wheel that we're going to take, I think about what we need to really turn the ignition. And I think it begins with that combination of inspiration and perspiration as we go about in Rotary, reimagining or reapproaching or recommitting to the opportunity that awaits us and the goals that we can achieve. And I think that for me is rooted, that frame of mind of inspiration and perspiration is really rooted in my agricultural background. There's Grandma and Grandpa on the left of the screen and my uncle on his prized farm awl. You know, I think it's rooted in agriculture. It's rooted in my background. And here's the farm I was raised on, located just south of West Bend. That would be a hill in north central Iowa. Where we live and farm is pretty flat. But we had a great time. I had a great time growing up on the farm and learning work ethic. And here I am, at probably a freshman or a sophomore in high school, and I was involved in an organization called FFA. And every year we held fruit sales. And I don't know what that inner drive was, but I always wanted to excel at those fruit sales. I knew it would generate resources for our chapter. And I also saw it as a great opportunity to get out and about the community of 740 people to meet and greet some people who maybe weren't able to get out as much as they would like. I had that drive to always want to excel in those fruit sales. And I think all of us can excel in everything we do. Now, being the youngest of four growing up on the farm, I was in charge of the livestock. I had some older siblings and they wanted to be out in the field and operating the equipment. But I had a great affinity for farmers and for farming. And as the old saying goes, if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. And that has certainly been the case for me now, 26 years into an agricultural communications profession and working with thousands of farmers all across Iowa as they provide the food and the fiber and the fuel that a growing world population needs. But again, successful people and companies and Rotary clubs have always intrigued me. I always think, what do achievers have in common? What do those businesses that excel, clubs that excel, what do they have in common? And I explored that in the book that Alka mentioned, You Are Destined for Greatness. And in that book, published just a year and a half ago, I went out and I spent time with 27 people who are leading from where they are at. They may be university presidents, they may be CEOs of companies, of banks, they lead character organizations, they have run zoos and lotteries. Just a tremendous variety of backgrounds, personalities. And the one thing that they all shared with me was that we can all lead from exactly where we are at. That there is no journey more personal than leadership. And I want to go on a journey here with us this morning, and I want to hit on 6 shares that I think we can put to work, that we can initiate in our leadership roles in Rotary. And I chose the topic title, You're at the Wheel, Turn the Ignition, for a reason, because the inspiration for my comments this morning really came from being in the passenger seat as my 15-year-old son, Grant, began his learning journey toward receiving his permit. And all of us who have ever been through that, and this was the second child now that I have been through that experience with, knows what it's like to be there in the passenger seat as your son or daughter takes the wheel and begins that journey toward earning their driver's permit. And it's a little bit hairy. It's a little bit of an out of body experience to be there in the passenger seat and watching as someone else takes the wheel. And of course, there are a lot of things to be mindful of as they take that step. I mean, that's a big deal. Getting behind that wheel and turning the ignition for the first time and creeping out of the driveway onto the road and looking both ways and checking the mirrors and being mindful of all the controls. And as I walked Grant through the process of taking that wheel and turning the ignition and setting forward, I reminded him that, this is where the rubber really meets the road. This is going to be a responsibility that you have. And with the responsibility comes a tremendous sense of duty and also expectations. Expectations that you're going to be focused, that you're going to be mindful, that you're going to be aware of your surroundings. This is a major responsibility. And I think it applies to all of us in roles where we are soon to be behind the wheel. And it's up to us to take that key and to turn the ignition. And there are 6 shares that I want to provide here this morning that I hope will be helpful in your leadership role, not just with Rotary, but maybe it's with family, maybe it's where you work, maybe it's other organizations that you volunteer for. And that first is attitude, the importance of attitude. It's indeed everything. Because isn't this a little bit of what life looks like today? Isn't this kind of the journey that we're on? Actually, this is more of the kind of the journey we're on today. What great comments leading into this closing session about the world that we're in today. It's chaotic. There are a lot of things coming at us. And there are so many things that we don't have control over. And I'm reminded of that every day working for farmers. All of the things that are outside of a farmer's control. I mean, weather, markets, the value of the US dollar, what happens in a country half a world away, all kinds of things like derechos and floods. There are so many things outside of our control. And we don't always have a sign like this. We don't always have these kinds of visual cues and reminders like this. If you hit this sign, you will hit that bridge. No, life doesn't work that way. Maybe it would be nice if it did, but it doesn't. We can't control many of the circumstances that come out at us. And I was reminded of that as I stood with this farmer in Northeast Iowa. That's what's left of his farm after an F4 tornado struck the small town of Fairbank not too many years ago. There are so many circumstances that are outside of our control. But the one thing that we do have control of is our attitude. How do we see things? Do we see a glass half empty, or do we see a glass half full? You know, attitude among the people that I visited with as I authored You Are Destined for Greatness, they came back time and time and time and time again to attitude. And they said attitude is the greatest determinant of one's future. Think about that attitude, and it's something that we can control. I was reminded again of this when I sat down for a conversation with Coach Jenny Baranchik. Jenny is the head coach of the Drake women's basketball team. And she went back to the year when she took the job as head coach. And it was 2012. And she talked to me about a year ago about the importance of attitude, flipping that switch. Again, something that can be controlled. Flipping that switch about attitude and talking to her players and reinforcing in them the importance of attitude, a positive attitude, a team-centered attitude, an attitude about the future and bringing our best every day. And look at the results. From 11-20 her first year, 5-13 in the conference, to 22-8, 14-4 in their last full season. And here they are this year, getting ready to take the court in the NIT. That's the power of positive attitude. As she says, we may not be the very best every day, but it's a choice to bring our very best every day. Attitude. Again, one of the people that I spoke with and interviewed in You Are Destined for Greatness was Kirk Tyler, CEO, president of Atlantic Bottling. And he said, Aaron, you give me someone with a positive attitude, and they can accomplish anything within our company here at Atlantic Bottling and Coca-Cola. So my first self-check to you here this morning is, what attitude do you bring with you into every Rotary meeting, into every committee meeting, into your place of work, into your family? What is the attitude that you bring? What is the persona? What do you share without even saying a word? What is that attitude? Because again, it is so critical to leadership. It's so critical to leadership in Rotary and in everything that we do. The second share this morning that I want to impart with you is to spend a moment on goal setting. And the importance, and I liken it to learning to drive. And there's a reason there's a reverse on the shift, is I think it's very important that when we set goals, that we also work it backwards, that we walk back from that goal. You know, anybody can make a splashy goal, and you can write it down, and sometimes we don't necessarily give enough thought to that goal that we're putting before a club, or before our coworkers, or before others that we work with or that we volunteer with. And I often, as I set goals at my place of work and both personally and professionally, spend a lot of time on it. I spend a lot of time on that goal and getting it right. And I think about not only working it backwards, but also taking that first step I have a goal each week of getting in 1,000 steps. Maybe you're like me. Probably a lot of you have a Fitbit on you or something similar to it. And I haven't truly realized if it's a blessing or a curse to have that attached to my wrist, especially when I'm driving and it buzzes at me. It reminds me you've got to get moving. But I do believe that it keeps me centered. It keeps me on track. And I have a goal every week of reaching 100,000 or more steps. But I break it down by working it backwards and saying to myself, okay, that's 14,300 steps a day. Is that achievable? Is that realistic? And I have found that it is. And so I break down a goal of getting to 100,000 steps every week by looking at it day to day. And then looking at each day at how I can get to 14,300 steps. And so I think by working backwards from a goal, by breaking it down, we soon determine whether it's attainable and, more importantly, how to get there, how to get to that goal. And so I encourage you as leaders, as Rotarians, as those who are going to be, taking that wheel and turning the ignition. Think about those goals that you set for yourself and for your club, and make sure that they are indeed realistic, that they're attainable. And by all means, take that first step, because small starts get big results. And what I see is too often we perhaps set goals that are too grand, and we often don't know where to even begin. So take it in small bites, take it in small steps. Perhaps we can do some goal setting in 0 to 100, or maybe 0 to 75. I just returned from a 5-day spring break, and we drove right at about 2,000 miles to and from Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas, where we spent some time as a family. And I thought about the all of the different speeds that we encountered along the way. And no, I did most of the driving. Grant didn't. I don't believe he was quite ready for the Dallas Fort Worth traffic. But we broke it down. 0 to 10 miles an hour. Maybe as a club, maybe a goal is to add a new member in the first month, this next month. Maybe as we increase our speed a little bit, we look at more members. But remember, membership is the fuel for our club and for our clubs. Membership is so critical. And as we increase membership, it becomes our rocket fuel for Rotary. Members are essential. So I always think about, when we set goals, looking at membership. And maybe as we move to 15 to 25 miles an hour in the coming year, maybe a goal is increasing visibility in our communities. How can we do that? What are some ways that Rotary can be more present in our communities? Maybe there are some relationships that we can establish with some of our friends in the media, in places, people who have an audience that we can reach. So visibility. Maybe as we increase to 25 to 55 miles an hour, maybe we look at an even greater membership growth goal. Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 10% of membership growth. And maybe as we get even quicker and we speed up even faster, now we're 55 to 65 miles, maybe it's a new service project that we look to launch. I know with the Waukee Rotary, I'm very privileged to be involved in a music festival that now is in year 3, that we are really looking at this fall's music festival being our most successful ever. And in doing the service project, you can add members, you can grow visibility in the community. So that is that 55 to 65. And then if we really want to get into the fast lane, maybe it's chartering a new club in the community, or getting involved with the local with the high schools and getting more youth involved in Rotary. And I think what we'll find, and what we find is as we take that wheel and we turn the ignition, is that momentum creates more momentum. You know, it's pure physics. A body in motion stays in motion. Conversely, a body at rest stays at rest. So be in motion, make those goals, work it backwards. So my second self-check to you here this morning: what 3 goals will you establish today to make the most of tomorrow in your Rotary leadership role? In fact, jot them down in the time that we have left here today, this morning. What are those goals? Make sure they're attainable. Make sure that they are achievable, because again, that momentum will create more momentum. So make those 3 goals here today. It's critically important, and write those goals down. The third of the 6 shares here this morning: be in the moment. Be in the moment. I love flying. I love flying. I love that ascent. I love being, 2,000 and then 5,000 and then 10,000 and then 30 and 35,000, and then even when traveling internationally, 37,000 feet up in the air. There's something truly inspiring to me about flight. And as I thought more about it, perhaps the reason is because it's also a great opportunity to be in the moment. You have to stow those cell phone, you have to turn them off, and during flight, you have to stow everything, and you're in the moment. And I so appreciate that, because we probably don't do enough of that. We probably don't do enough of being in the moment. And I've thought about that, and look around us. We're in a world today where everything is trying to speed us up, go faster and faster and faster. The world is getting noisier and noisier and noisier. And it's becoming really difficult to truly be in the moment. And there's a lot of things that we either miss, or we don't take inventory of, or signs that we don't see, or all kinds of really interesting things that may pass us by because we're not truly in the moment. And here was a sign outside my daughter's 5th grade classroom when I sat down for parent-teacher conferences not long ago. And I thought to myself, whoever wrote this sign was not in the moment. But are we in the moment? Do we take time to also just recognize what's around us? There's so much fun and good around us. Do we pause to be in the moment? I love this house, a Christmas light display, and the house next to it, ditto, with an arrow pointing to what may be Clark Griswold's house. I don't know. But are we in the moment? Because as leaders, as Rotarians, it's critical that we are in the moment, because there is magic in being in the moment. There's magic in taking time to be where we are at, to look around us. And I was reminded of this 2 years ago when our family took a different trip. And this was a 9-state pilgrimage to visit 8 different national parks. And here we are at the Grand Canyon. And if I was in front of you and you were all in front of me, I would ask for a show of hands. How many of you have traveled to the Grand Canyon? Because it is a beautiful, beautiful park. And as we were walking the South Rim Trail, there's my family, Crystal and Garrett, Grant, and Jalen, and we're on the South Rim Trail of the Grand Canyon. And I remember a voice as I was walking the trail and just doing everything I could to be in the moment. I heard a voice in my ear from a professional photographer who I know. And the voice said, Aaron, some of the best photos are behind you. So take time to turn around and look behind you. And I took that advice and I turned around and there was this young couple. Talk about being in the moment. Here they are in the midst of the Grand Canyon, and nothing else matters at this moment. There's a proposal going on. And I was so inspired by what I saw that I grabbed I had a Nikon with a zoom lens, and I decided to capture this moment on film or on my Nikon. And one photo led to another photo, and then a third photo and a fourth photo. And by this point, I'm kind of getting the look that, Aaron, we probably should be moving along the South Rim Trail. But I was so in the moment as well that I captured a several more, and maybe a dozen or two more after. And then I took the heating and I joined my family, and we continued to make our way up the South Rim Trail. And we didn't get too far before we decided to turn around and head back down the South Rim Trail to where we had come from. And guess who was greeting us, approaching us on the South Rim Trail? That's right, it was this young couple. And I had a little bit of a dilemma. I started asking myself this question internally: do I stop? Do I introduce myself? Do I let them know that I kind of eavesdropped on their special moment, or do I just continue moving down the trail? And I think my wife would have preferred that we kept moving along the trail, but something stopped me as this young couple and us became adjacent there on the trail. And I stopped and I turned to them and I said, hello. I said, hello, my name is Aaron and I'm from Iowa. And I just couldn't help but want to congratulate you on your engagement. And they stopped and they looked at me with both kind of a fascination and a little bit of a disbelief. And they said, well, hello, yes, we are engaged and we are so excited about it. And we're from Florida. And it's really nice to make your acquaintance on the trail here. And I said, well, I did a little bit more than just noticed. I happened to capture a few photos of you in your engagement. And the disbelief turned a little bit to shock and surprise and awe. And the young woman looked at me and she said, you captured photos of our engagement? And I said, well, yes, I did. I have a few dozen of them on my camera. And she says, oh my goodness, you have photos? Because we don't. My fiance did a lot of things right. He remembered the ring, he remembered the camera, he remembered the tripod. He just forgot to make sure that there were batteries along for the trip. So the photos that I had on my camera were the only photos that they had of that special moment. We became best friends on that trail, and I shared every photo I had, and they immediately went up on their Facebook page and shared with all of their friends and family. Big moments, Rotarians, can be had in the everyday moments. And I encourage you to make the most of those moments. As Randy Edeker, who's featured in You Are Destined for Greatness, he's the CEO, president, and board chair of Hy-Vee, says, slow down, never be too big for a moment because you think you have too many other things to do. Moments matter. Make the most of them. There's clarity that can come in the quietness and in the stillness. And so my third self-check for you this morning is, where can you find a moment this coming week to be in the stillness, to be in the quietness, to be in the moment, and to self-reflect, and to take inventory, and to chart your course for the week ahead? I do that every weekend. For me, it's Sunday morning. For me, it's on a Sunday morning. Each Sunday morning, I take a moment to quiet down, to be still, and to take inventory and to look at the week of opportunity that, Lord willing, I'll have in front of me, and how I can make the most of every opportunity and moment that comes along. The fourth share this morning is drive. There's drive on the shift because we've got to go places. We have to make progress happen. We have to move. We have to go forward. As I was in the car with Grant, there's not a lot of ways or need to look back. Now, it's important we do. That's why a car comes with the rear view mirror, with the side mirrors. But I took a moment when I got out of the car to actually measure the amount of area devoted to looking behind us. So I measured the rear view mirror and the two side mirrors, and they totaled 185 square inches. So 185 square inches of space are devoted to looking behind us. Conversely, I measured the area of the windshield, the ability to look forward. 1,575 square inches devoted to looking at where we're going, or nearly 8 times the surface area of the rear view mirrors. And I think that's why we're often reminded, don't look back a lot, because we're not going that way. But you ever noticed how many people do spend time looking back? We must be agents of change in looking forward, in driving forward. Because there's a lot of paralysis by being a neutral, by being afraid of making decisions. Because, at the end of the day, it's okay to be wrong. It's a good thing to commit. Let's not be afraid to commit. As leaders, we have to commit, we have to drive, we have to move forward. People are counting on us. Because, like it or not, most people fear making a commitment. There's real fear of accountability, there's fear of failure, there's fear of change, there's fear of criticism, there's even fear of being successful. Yes, there is actually fear of getting to where we want to go. We have to rise above that. We cannot let fear master us. And again, driving through Dallas Fort Worth is not the most enjoyable thing to do. But I tell you what, it's easy to have fear when you're in those 8 lanes of traffic and you have a fork. It seems like there's a fork in every road, and there's 2 lanes this way, 3 lanes that way, 4 lanes this way. Fear, if you have fear master you on that road, you will likely not get on the freeway and the interstate. And I thought about this in being an author. And I remember when I first met Chuck Long, successful quarterback of the Iowa Hawkeyes, holds every passing record at the University of Iowa, and now is the CEO of the Iowa Sports Foundation. I remember having the idea of writing his book, but I was fearful of committing to writing it. So I had the idea of writing Chuck's biography. Chuck was supportive, he was in favor of it. And for 3 months, the idea was here, and was here only. And I'll never forget the day when I was at work with 65 coworkers, and we were all around the board table. We were all in the boardroom for an all staff meeting. And our CEO said, you know what? I want each of you, we're going to take a minute, each of you take 15 to 20 seconds and announce something today that you are going to commit to doing, that you're going to drive toward doing this coming year. And fortunately, I was the last of the 65 because he started around the other side of the room. And I sat there and I said, is this an opportunity to commit publicly to writing Chuck's biography? And I thought about it. And when my turn came, I stood up and I said, you know, I'm going to, in the coming year, author Chuck Long's story. And it's going to be titled Destined for Greatness. And it was publicly committing to that goal that got me started. And I think today, and that was in 2017, and since that time, we have participated in 175 book signings all across the United States, including one on a cruise ship, an Iowa Hawkeye cruise. I thought about all that I would have missed out on if I did not commit publicly to that goal, to that project. And the same holds true for traveling internationally. When I joined the Iowa Soybean Association 10 years ago, I was mindful that 96% of our customers for what we grow in Iowa live somewhere other than the United States. 96% of the world's population, as we know in Rotary too, is somewhere other than the United States. How cool is it that Rotary is an international organization? So much like being in Rotary, if you're in agriculture, and particularly soybean production in Iowa, and you have a fear of traveling internationally, that could be a problem. That could hold you back. And I was fearful of traveling internationally. There was something about being away from family for maybe a week to 10 days. I'm not fond of flying over oceans. I don't mind flying. I'm just not fond of flying over the Pacific or the Atlantic, to be quite honest with you. But I committed to traveling internationally. And my first trip in 2016 was to Thailand. And I've since now been to China twice, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and it has enriched my life 1,000%. And as we know in Rotary, and for those who have traveled internationally for Rotary or for business, the relationships and the perspective you gain by stepping out of your comfort zone and getting to know people and their needs and their wants in other countries is truly transformational. So my fourth self-check to you this morning: what will you commit to today publicly? What will you let someone else know of that you're going to do? What will you state? How will you put that shift into drive and move forward on something that will be transformational? My fifth share is be your best self. There are 4 very powerful words. I believe in you. These are 4 powerful words. And I think about, do we inspire? Do we recognize others? You know, I was mindful not long ago of my oldest son, Garrett, who was getting up day after day after day after day, often before I even did, 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m., on his way to optional weightlifting, optional football drills for his high school team. And about 2 months into that, I realized that, you know, I had not recognized him for that effort, for always being present for those voluntary workouts and events to make the team better. And so one morning, I just scribbled a short note, first thing that came to my mind. And that note read, "Dear Garrett, I'm proud of you for your commitment to football, your coaches, and your teammates. Keep up the great work. Effort always pays." And I placed that note by a cereal bowl one morning. as he was already out of the house for, one of those voluntary football drills and practices. And it was about 2 months later when Garrett again was on his way out of the house and he didn't have his billfold. And I said, Garrett, I tell you what, head to the car. I'll run upstairs. I'll grab your billfold. Where's it at? He said, Dad, it's on my nightstand, right by my lamp, right by the bed. And I ran up to grab his billfold. And keep in mind, this is about 2 months later. And there, right by his billfold, on his nightstand, was this note that I had written him 2 months earlier. And I'm telling you what, if just a short note or a short word of encouragement can be profound for a 16-year-old, I believe it will be profound for others that we work with, that we network with. I love this quote from Iowa State football coach Matt Campbell, who said, "Greatness isn't for the chosen few, but for those that choose to be the best version of themselves." Fact of the matter is, we can all lead right from where we're at right now, and we can help others do the same by passing along a word of encouragement. So my fifth self-check to you this morning is, who needs your encouragement right now? Who can use a word of encouragement right now? Jot that person's name down. It could be a member of your Rotary Club. It could be another Rotarian. It could be a friend. It could be an acquaintance. It could be someone that you volunteer with, somebody you've crossed paths. Maybe it's just one person that you've met just once, but you know that right now they could use a word of encouragement. I try each week to send out one unexpected note of encouragement to someone. It may be an email, it may be a handwritten card. Because you know what? Over the course of the year, I will have sent out 52 notes of encouragement to someone. We can all use a little word of encouragement, can't we? So be that encourager. And finally, my sixth share for you today is, as Rotary leaders, as you get behind that wheel and you reach to turn that key on the ignition, is to be humble. You know, the greatest leaders are the most humble servants. Humility is hard to find these days. It's all about me, it seems. It's sometimes who can be the noisiest, who can be the loudest. And yet there is such joy, there's such profound energy and humility. And I saw it every day in my parents. Here's Dad, who I took this photo in 2012 on a trip back to the farm, back to West Bend from central Iowa here in the Waukee area. Went back to the farm. I try to get back there often. And I said, Dad, I'd like to take you out to the field and I'd like to grab some photos. And as normal, he grabbed his trusty 5-gallon bucket and he linked arms with Mom. And Mom is blind. And this is how they always made their way together, arm in arm. And I captured some photos, and it meant so much to me, as did Dad's farm sale. And now here we are in 2002, the day of Dad's farm sale. And I'll always remember that day. In 50 minutes, Dad sold 50 years worth of equipment that made the farm run, that provided for a family of 6. And you can see it wasn't the greatest lineup of equipment. You can see the planter, the 6-row planter, 4-row corn head, small wagon, a hog trailer, some of this equipment he made himself. And what was so interesting about that day is it started out really dark and dreary. It was a cold, there was some mist in the air, it was cloudy. What was so awesome about the day and being there for Dad's farm sale is that as the sale went on, that 50 minutes, the sky became brighter and brighter and brighter and bluer until we got to the final item that was auctioned that day. And it was Dad's 886 International Harvester tractor, 1986 vintage, about 10,000 hours on it. It was the only cab tractor that Dad owned. And there he is with his back to us, and He was so pleased to see the sale go so well. And there were a couple of things that dawned on me that morning. The first thing was all the people that showed up for that farm sale for a lineup of equipment that didn't have a lot of practicality for most of the people who showed up. And yet there you see the crowds, and there was a line of cars like that up 15, and a line of cars like that going south on Highway 15, and a line of cars going up the gravel road to the east. And as the day concluded, and Dad settled into his easy chair, and we did some reminiscing, I was mindful that, you know what, maybe the reason so many people showed up that day and so many people wanted to be part of that day was because Dad was very, very humble. Dad was a very humble and meek individual. And even during the 80s, when he could have grown the farm, he didn't. Dad was comfortable with who he is. He was okay in being that first follower. He didn't have to be the loudest in the room. He was so joyful to be who he was, to have the farm that he had. And that humility, I was reminded of one final time when Dad passed in 2017, the same year I published my first book. Dad passed, his visitation was on my birthday. And it was, I think, his final lesson and reminder to me that, Aaron, it's really never about you. Leaders, it's really never about us. It's about others. It's about those who we can inspire. And so my final self-check to you this morning is, how can you excel as the first follower? How can you help others around you be better? Because humility is a defining principle of leadership. So with that, fellow Rotarians, things do not happen. Things are made to happen. Take the wheel and turn the key, and have a great year ahead. Thank you.